What is up, YouTube, and welcome to this Fear Street 1994 movie breakdown, review, and Easter eggs. There is nothing like a good slasher flick, and this trilogy has a lot of potential. The idea of a trilogy set in different time periods to me is so very cool, and most of it did remind me of the camp and 80s part of American Horror Story. That season was just so good to me. And here, it opens with pure distilled 90s nostalgia. It did seem very odd that they went with a slasher flick in 1994, when the late 90s had sort of the slasher boom once more, with Scream kicking it off, and we had I Know What You Did Last Summer, and all those legendary movies. We also had references to iconic movies throughout, and the second movie is essentially a Friday the 13th homage. Now, the movies are based on the books by R.L. Stine, released in 1989. Of course, Stine is the author of the iconic Goosebumps books for kids, which, while they were spooky and they did scare me as a kid, they weren't exactly as gruesome as the Fear Street franchise. The book series was focused around Shadyside, like we saw in the movie, and it's a hub of gruesome murders while the neighbouring town prospers. The movie largely follows the core story that forms the basis for the anthology series of books. It started way back in 1666 when a suspected witch was burned at the stake. She then cursed people after escaping death by reportedly chopping off her hand there, and well, this then led to one of the first murders by a religious leader who was taken over and possessed like the other people in the books. And that more than likely would have been a Puritan who would have led the sort of case against this witch. And throughout time, she would possess more and more people and wreak havoc in the land of the living, and mainly in Shadyside, which has caused absolute chaos. While these all happened there, the neighbouring town did absolutely prosper from not having all of this crime and murder, where a famous serial killer seems to pop up every so often. It all started with the supposed witch, and while the books go into great detail how the curse was created, and, well, the movie seems to focus solely on the young woman accused of being a witch, which I kind of prefer instead of her relatives making the curse. But we do have a trilogy, so I expect next movie at least we will learn a bit more, and then the final movie is in 1666, so you can guess what that's all about. The movie opens with a girl at a mall who clearly hates her job at the mall, and yes, that is the same girl from Stranger Things, and well, where did we see her in Stranger Things? At the mall. Now, she finishes up her job and her friend spooks her and they prepare to leave, except he has become an infamous Shadyside killer himself and would later be known as the Shadyside Killer or the Skull Mask. Well, he looks like an homage to Ghostface from Scream, and he even chases her and she gets stuck under a grate, similar to the garage door there in Scream. She's eventually struck down as the Skull Mask is killed as well, and we cut to Dina. Now, Dina is pining over her ex Sam, who's moved to the rival town after her parents split up. With Dina being mad she got out of the hellhole that is Shadyside. Dina's brother Josh is a Shadyside truther, spending all day on AOL chat rooms and simping to another truther, who I hope is revealed as some sort of big twist, as most of the books also had big twists. The soundtrack is ridiculously good and very 90s, with Iron Maiden, Bush and Radiohead all providing a soundtrack to 1994. Now, Dina and Josh head to school where we learn Josh is obsessed with his sister's best mate, and the mates are a weird mix of cheerleaders, burnouts and band members. Also, they sell drugs, which, to be honest, that seemed really out of place in my opinion. The movie doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. It doesn't know if it wants to be like the edgy kind of Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, or if it wanted to be a parody of all of these movies, an homage much like we had with Cabin in the Woods. The rival towns will come face to face in a football game, except there is to be a vigil before where Dina will confront her ex. Everyone heads to the luxurious part of town where the vigil ends in a fight, and Dina and Sam part ways on bad terms, which leads to a dangerous prank with Sam and her new boyfriend chasing the Shadysiders and throwing stuff at their bus as Dina's nose bleeds and she chucks a barrel at the car, causing it to crash, and here begins the haunting. Sam crashes into the bones of fear and bleeds on them, which causes her to have visions, and would later learn that the witch Fear wants her, leading to the many different killers of the past to come and hunt her down. Of course, we had very different things, many different killers who are like iconic ones, like a kid killer who looks like Leslie Vernon, and we also had a Friday the 13th parody as well. I did think the nosebleeds would signify that the person is becoming a killer, like the skull mask, but it might be a red herring, or it might have been the witch actually controlling everyone. Dina has the blood of Sam on her shoes, and Simon has it on his top, which he hasn't washed off. Now, Dina is actually being hunted by the skull mask because of the blood, but they wouldn't realise later that, well, the blood is the key, and they believe that the people hunting them is a prank by Sam's boyfriend behind this, but they realise that's not true when he's murdered at the hospital, and Sam and all of them need to escape in an ambulance. Now, the police completely ignore them, and I did think that the main cop might have been behind this, but I still think he could be part of the lineage of the witch there in some way, as the kids make the realisation that the dead killers are coming back, as Josh explains the history of the town and, well, that it has to be real. They realise that they need to go to the woods to find Fear's remains, and realise that they disturbed her bones back in the car crash, which caused them to be hunted, and she wants revenge on Sam for disturbing her slumber. These all leads to the killers to converge on them. They decide to wash the blood off and change their clothes and lure the killers to a trap, while Josh gets his end away, as do Sam and Dina, and the other guy just bashes his bishop because yeah, that was really weird, wasn't it? The plan sort of works, but the villains just regenerate, and Josh explains that there's one survivor, a C. Berman at Camp Nightwing, who they try to call, but they get no answer. However, they do in their research find out that she died, which means that Sam now needs to die. Thankfully, we had some setup at the start of the movie where we heard that, well, one of the brothers actually died in an OD, and, well, he came back. So they head to the pharmacy where he was employed a month despite skimming stuff off the top, and create a cocktail of drugs to kill Sam and then bring her back with the adrenaline Pulp Fiction style. Now the killers converge and brutally murder Kate, which really made me queasy when I was eating my bolognese watching this movie, and also her partner in crime. Now Sam dies due to drowning and comes back, but we think it's all over, but no. C. Burnham actually calls Dina to explain the witch will never stop. I really like the fact that it was Gillian Jacobs, and she is just superb in pretty much everything she does. I'm still waiting for another season of Love, and I can't wait to hear her in the next season of Invincible. Now, she was the final girl from Friday the 13th knockoff Camp Nightwing as stand-in for Camp Crystal Lake. The sequel is set at Camp Nightwing with a young C. Burnham, as we will see pre-94 killers with a kid who looks like Leslie Vernon and more. Sam is tied up and their friends' names are on the weird witch stone thing, meaning I expect them to return, and I love how the next movie is out just a week later, with the third following a week after that, following the events of 1666. We will see Josh and Dina hunt down C. Burnham to learn what happened. Overall, I enjoyed the movie, but to be honest, I did lose interest in kind of like the middle part as it slowed down, and it just seemed a bit simplistic, mainly because I felt like the supporting cast were incredibly generic and they kind of fell a bit flat. But there is potential here, and I think the fact that this one felt a bit flat, mainly because it was a trilogy, so we don't get a full payoff of the whole story. But that is it for this video. Please drop a like down below. Please do subscribe with notifications on. I should have a Tomorrow War video breakdown at some point, but that is it. I'll see you soon. Have an awesome Friday, and I'll see you soon, and goodbye.